welcome to the second video in my series in which my son Chucky asked me to teach him about a specific subject, and so I make a video on YouTube in an attempt to do just that. Trying my hand this week at an intro video. I have it, you've already seen it. Let me know what you think of it below in the comments. It's still a work in progress. Could change it completely. We'll be updating it definitely as I get more advanced in the editing. Still learning. I'm doing this all trial and error, so if I make something that looks bad, just let me know. I will be sure to fix it. Last week I covered black widow spiders, and based on the feedback that I got, it seemed to go a lot better than I figured it would. Because of that, I'll stick to the general format that I set up in last week's video until I find a better or more interesting way to convey the information, or until I get enough requests to add something, leave something out, change a way I'm doing something in the order in which I do it. I take requests, I take all of your feedback, and I use it to make this better, because this is not something I'm doing for myself so much as I'm doing this to keep you entertained and keep you knowledgeable. So just let me know. You gotta let me know. I can't change and make myself better unless I'm receiving some kind of constructive criticism. Let's say that. Don't be mean. Just tell me how to make it better. I do apologize that last week's video was nearly an hour long. I did get some feedback on that. So, I mean, there was just a lot of information to share on that topic, and I don't really have a good flow going. I am still pretty new to this. This is my second video in which I'm in front of the camera doing the YouTube thing, and it's been since high school since I've done anything like this. It's like 13 years coming now. But I will get the flow and timing down and get the hang of it. Just give me some time. Depending on how much information per subject that I get, I can shorten the videos by either splitting them into two, where I have part 1 and part 2 with a lot of information, or I can just start leaving out some of the topics, some of the more nitpicky information, based off of what you guys like to hear in these videos. And then on that, I'll just stick to the really cool stuff, but if you want me to go into further depth about any specific topic contained in a video, I can do a whole separate video on that. It's just one of the ways I'm thinking I might do this, depending on time frame. So despite those setbacks, I want to thank everybody for your feedback so far, and support, definitely support, while I'm attempting this endeavor. Also, thank you to Chase for your kind comments, and I will do what I can to keep this series going, even if it ends up just being you and Chucky watching. That's a win in my book, because that's really why I started this. And Chase, I'm sure if you ask nice enough, Chucky will let you even pick a topic for upcoming weeks. I'd like to see what you might want to learn about as well. Okay, this week, much the same as last, I went online to do fact checking. It's always a good thing to make sure you're double checking what you think you know. Even if you're 100% sure that you know it, double check just in case, because it's easy to make a mistake and it doesn't hurt anything. I also gathered extra information on great whites, some cool stuff. So because I did that, I want to thank P.A. Smith for the information he provided on the website animalfactsguide.com. The link will be down below. I'd also like to thank, I can't forget these people, the countless contributors to Wikipedia. It is a crowdsourced information source. Yeah. So most scholarly institutions don't really want you using it as a reference, but if people are doing it right, just like I'm doing here, I'm giving you my references of where I'm getting my information. As long as people are doing that and you can verify that those references know what they're talking about, use Wikipedia. As long as the references check out, you're golden. That's all I'll say on that. So, with that being said, on to this week's topic, which is great white sharks. This was requested by Chucky in last week's comments. So, great white sharks belong to the phylum Chordata. Now, Chordata means it is an organism that, quote, have at some stage of development an axial rod-like notochord for the support of the body. End quote. To break it down, make it as simple as possible, essentially they can have a spinal column and a spinal cord. Basically, if the creature's a vertebrate, it's in the Chordata phylum. So you, me, dogs, birds, frogs, so on. Skeletal system. So that was phylum, Chordata. From there we move on to the class. And the class for the great whites is the Chondrichthyes class. Chondrichthyes. I love Latin. It's so much fun to try and talk. This class is defined by cartilaginous fish, which are jawed vertebrates, Chordata vertebrate, jawed vertebrates with paired fins, scales, and a skeleton made of cartilage rather than bone. So there are a few other descriptors that apply to this this order, but we'll just kind of leave it at that for now because it really does get in depth, because there are a lot of intricacies on that. It's at this point where all sharks are lumped together in this classification. So if it's a shark, it fits in this classification. But from here down is basically where we start separating all the sharks into their different spots on the classification tree. And that covers all of the sharks that have developed in the past 425-ish million years of history on Earth. Oh, and speaking of 425 or so million years of shark history, did you know that sharks have been on Earth longer than trees? Yeah, trees. Just think like those oak trees, maple trees, anything you're used to. Sharks have been around longer. The earliest known species of plant that could be classified as a tree didn't appear in the fossil record until 350 or so million years ago. So that means that sharks were around from 50 to 75 million years before any single tree species even popped up. Sharks have actually been around so long they've survived 4 separate mass extinction events. 4. Like the one that took out the dinosaurs, sharks survived it. It's insane. Okay, back to the classification. We're now on to the order. And great white sharks are part of the lamniform order, also known as mackerel sharks. This order is distinguished by the sharks having 2 dorsal fins. For great whites, the dorsal is the tall one on the back, and there's a smaller one near their tail. So that's their 2 dorsal fins, dorsal on the back. And they also have an anal fin, which is on the bottom, 5 gill slits, and then eyes that lack what is called a nictitating membrane. Now, a nictitating membrane is basically it's a second eyelid. Like we have these for us, we don't have nictitating membranes. We do have the remnants of one from what our past relatives had one. It's basically a clear membrane that goes over the eye sideways. A lot of birds have them. It's clear or whitish. It's basically just to keep the eye protected, similar to a regular eyelid. But like I said, they don't have one. They also are distinguished by a mouth that extends behind the eyes. So some sharks will have a mouth that comes back, but it doesn't go behind the eye. These, it goes back further, so they have a bigger jaw. Sharks in this order also have a higher body temperature than the water around it. So they could be swimming in cold water and still maintain their metabolism. This order contains 22 total species of shark. 22. And honestly, of those 22, only 17 of those species are considered extant, which means still alive today. So out of 22, and you get the 17 there that are still alive, that means that 5 no longer are around. They are extinct. So not only the great whites are in this order, but close relatives in this order are species like goblin sharks and megamouth sharks, just to name a few. Moving lower from here, we get to the family of Lamnidae, or Lamnidae. Once again, can go either way depending on who's saying it. Means the same thing. This family, Lamnidae, are known as white sharks. Hey everyone, before we carry on with Lamnidae, or the white sharks, we did have some technical difficulties while filming this. As I said, this is a work in progress, as being my second video. The first video had some issues. I improved upon them for this video by getting a better camera. Turns out that camera is better, has better quality, but doesn't have a better battery life than the plugged-in laptop. So that's just something that I'm overcoming. I'm working on it. I'm going to figure out a better way, whether it's buy a new battery, extra batteries, whatever. But I just wanted to put this little tidbit in just so you have a little bit of context as to why there's going to be a hard cut. There's actually a lot more video that I went through, but I didn't realize I wasn't recording because the battery died until the camera actually shut off. But technical difficulties aside, I thought I'd give you a little bit of behind the scenes, and we'll move on from here. We'll get better. We'll get these flowing, get everything set up. But without further ado, let's return to the family of Lamnidae, or the white sharks. Welcome back. Along with the technical issues with the camera, I also had to change my location due to lighting. It's later in the day, so the window behind me really wasn't working light-wise. But without further ado, let's jump back into this. We are at Lamnidae, also known as white sharks. Alright, so this family of sharks, they're all large, fast-swimming sharks with pointed snouts, large gill openings, a large dorsal fin on the back, and huge teeth. Many of the sharks in this family are considered the fastest swimming fish in the ocean. As a matter of fact, the mako shark is the fastest shark. It's one of the fastest swimming fish on the planet. So from the family, we move on to the next step, and this is where we separate the powerful great white sharks from all other sharks. We get to the genus of Carcharodon. Now, Carcharodon is a genus that covers a couple of different species, but despite there being a couple of different species in there, all of them but the great white are extinct. So if anyone brings up Carcharodon, they're probably talking about a great white, whose scientific name is Carcharodon Carcharias. So if somebody says Carcharodon, it's a great white shark. Quick fact on top of that, the genus Carcharodon not only has the set species in it currently, there was also one more species that was considered to be a Carcharodon, and this is actually probably one of the most famous sharks, arguably probably on par with the great white, and that would be the megalodon. Now, generally when people think of the megalodon, they just imagine a giant great white shark, just great white times 5, and then just think about it swimming in the oceans, millions of years ago. But And in fact, the original scientific name for the megalodon was Carcharodon megalodon, and this was because even scientists pretty much had the same view of the megalodon, that it was just a giant great white, because the great white, is the apex of all sharks. So you get a bigger version that ruled the ocean, it's got to be the giant great white pretty much. But after many, many, many years of the study of the fossil evidence that's available, there's a nearly unanimous belief at this point among scientists that the megalodon actually belongs to a different family, which is Odontidae. It's a family that only it is in, and they believe it diverged or split away from the ancestral line of the great white somewhere during the early Cretaceous period, around 145 to 100 million years ago. So pretty much, here's the family tree line, and this straight up and down is great whites. Somewhere early Cretaceous, one shark slightly different, split away, and that's where megalodons came out. So you get these two different branches. Now, even though megalodon was the shark to beat all sharks, changes happened on the planet. Maybe it couldn't sustain itself. Maybe something happened, to its prey. So all of its prey species died. It couldn't keep feeding itself. So larger sharks just couldn't survive. There's a million different possibilities that could have happened for that specific species. But regardless, megalodon isn't alive anymore. Great white is, and now they're two separate families. But honestly, who knows? In 10 to 20 years, there could be another fossil found. It could be teeth, more jaws. They could find a more wholly preserved megalodon portion or whole, whichever. They got trapped in sediment and fully fossilized, and then they could actually come down and place it back in Carcharodon family, or create a completely different family, or link it to some other shark. It's constantly changing because we're still learning. Appearance-wise, with the great white, they can be identified by the large cone-shaped snout on their tails. You've got the upper part and the bottom part. Tails here, you got the fin on top, fin on bottom. Those are called lobes. The upper and lower lobe on a great white they're generally about the same size, and then you can also tell great whites by the gray and white counter shading that they have, with the white on the bottom, gray on the top. This counter shading coloring is designed so that they're less likely to be noticed by prey animals when viewed from any side, really. The gray on top makes them blend into the water when viewed from above. So if you got a seal swimming around near the surface, looks down, there's a light gradient, so it gets darker as they go deeper, and you got gray swimming down there, you're not going to see it as well. Same thing when looking from the bottom up, everything's getting lighter, you got the sunshine coming down, so you just have this white form swimming there, and it's going to be broken up by the way the light works. And even the sides, it's not a direct straight line down their side. It's kind of, here and there. And that helps get rid of that outline shape, makes it blend in more to the different light gradients of the water around them. Great whites, they also have very, very large eyes in proportion to their body. If you've ever seen pictures, they got them big old black spots going on. And they're big sharks, so if their eyes look that big on their body, that tells you about how big they are. And if you're daring enough to get close to a great white shark, you'll find out something surprising about their eyes. In reality, everybody thinks sharks' eyes are black, but they're not. Especially with the great white specifically. The iris, the colored part of the eye, so like I have like a brownish green going on, some people have gray, blue, whatever. The iris part of a great white's eye is actually a deep blue color. Now, people don't really realize this from a distance because, one, it's really hard to get close to a great white shark, and two, there is what's called the cornea, which is the lens that goes over the top of the eye. In humans it's clear, but with sharks the cornea is dark, it's mostly black. So that keeps you from being able to see the iris clearly. Another identifying characteristic is their size, obviously. One of the biggest sharks. Yeah, one of the biggest sharks. Not the biggest, there's a couple that are bigger. But they do get really, really big. Like, even small adults are twice as long as I am tall. Great whites exhibit what's called sexual dimorphism. That basically just means adult females of the species will exhibit different characteristics than adult males, other than those that dictate what their gender is. So, for instance, we talked about black widows last week. With black widows, the female is twice as big as the male and is usually different color. That's sexual dimorphism. So you're going to see that like in cardinals as well. Cardinals, you got the male cardinal, which is a bright red, pretty bird, but then the female is just kind of like a brown with a little bit of red. Same shape, about the same size, maybe a little bit of a size difference, but the coloration in the cardinal is the evidence of the sexual dimorphism. So with great white sharks, you have this exhibited in the size difference between the two, male and female. Now, so you're going to see males are the smaller of the two, with adult males usually getting on average between 11 to 13 foot. Still pretty big, but not as big as the females. Now the females can get to be between 15 or 16 foot long on average. Now, I'm 5'10", almost 6 foot, 2 inches shy, and I'm an average sized human, height-wise. So that means at my height, and you take the average length of a female, even if you meet in the middle, let's say 15.5 feet, that still puts a female, an average sized female, about 2.65 times longer than I am tall. 2.65 times. That's ridiculous for someone for an animal that's just the average size. And that doesn't even take into account the verified largest of the species. Now, the largest verified female great whites have been measured at around 20 foot. 20 foot is almost 3.5 times longer than I am tall. And that's insane to think about. Something that it gets that big makes me not want to go in the water. On top of that, these females, they weigh in somewhere between 4,200 to almost 5,000 pounds. That's 2 tons of shark, 2 full tons, and then some of shark. That's like a vehicle. That's like a car. So, moving to the distribution side of the sharks and where they live, where do great whites live? Anywhere great whites want to live. They make the rules. They decide. Great whites live in almost all coastal offshore waters that have a temperature of between 54 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit, which it makes up a considerable amount of the world if you think about it. And then on top of that, 54 being the low end doesn't mean that that's their limit, because as I said before, they maintain an internal body temperature that's higher than the water surrounding them. That lets them go into water colder than 54 degrees and still be able to maintain their metabolism and operate. Now, would they want to stay there very long? No, because that's going to be a giant loss of energy. If there's not a lot of prey around, they're going to have to eat all of the scant amount of prey that's around and then get out of there, because eventually it's going to suck all their energy up and they'll die. Coastal areas in which you're going to find these sharks are going to be places like the northeastern and Californian coast of the United States, South Africa, Japan, Chile, and the Mediterranean. Now, this isn't the only places that these sharks appear. This just tends to be where you're going to find a greater concentration. Like I said, coastal waters between that temperature range, you're going to have a chance of finding great white sharks. Now, it's generally assumed that great whites tend to be coastal territorial predators, but in recent years there have been a lot of findings that are starting to challenge this notion. For instance, it's been recorded that California great whites will migrate to what's known as the White Shark Cafe, is what researchers are calling it. And this is an area between Baja, the California Peninsula, which is the peninsula. If you look at California on a map, directly below, there's a peninsula in part of Mexico. That's where that is. And between that and Hawaii, sharks are just swimming out to the open ocean there. Now, the sharks will get there and they'll spend about 100 days in the open ocean. Not really sure what they're doing. They've been recorded diving to different depths at different speeds and different rates. But generally, after about 100 days there, the sharks just decide that they're done and they head back to the Californian coast. In instances in South Africa, sharks, there was a shark that was tagged off the South African coast, and they tracked it with the GPS monitor in the tag, and they tracked it all the way to Australia, the southern coast of Australia, and then it came back. I mean, all within a year. Yeah, within a year. And there's another shark that was tracked from South Africa, same way. Tracked it by GPS. They tracked it all the way to the northwestern coast of Australia. So it's been repeated by multiple sharks, this trip. And this one shark that went to the northwestern coast of Australia, it went there and back in 9 months. It's 12,000 miles, and still really don't know why. But with this, we're still learning about these sharks even after knowing about them for so long and dealing with them pretty much as long as humans have been dealing with warm coastal waters. We've been dealing with sharks. But with all this research that's going in, there's a lot of the once believed notions that everybody assumed were true. They're just being completely just blown out of the water and proven false. This right here, this is my PSA for, well, this moment at least. This right here just demonstrates the importance of wildlife research. With the way that the world is now, and a lot of species are in decline, and all of these different things going on with habitat destruction and just the unnecessary destruction of many different species. We need to study these animals and understand them, because we can't really save them in the future unless we know all that we can about them. I mean, if we don't have a clue as to what makes them tick, or why they go here, or why they look like this, when it comes down to time that they need our help, we really can't do anything about it, and there won't be enough of them left for us to figure it out. So, what does a great white shark eat? Well, anything that a great white shark wants to eat. That's the simplest answer as you can get. Fish and other sharks, cetaceans like dolphins and whales, pinnipeds, which are seals and sea lions. You got sea otters, sea turtles, even sea birds. So pretty much if there's an animal in or on the sea, if a shark can fit it in its mouth, it's going to probably be lunch when the shark runs into it. The only real restrictions that great whites have regarding prey and what they eat, it pretty much limits based off of their size at the time that they're hunting. These size restrictions play a pretty big role simply because of prey selection. For instance, smaller sharks that aren't fully grown, like 5 or 6 foot, which is big to us, but for them not. They're going to feed mainly on fish, smaller creatures. It's because these sharks aren't big enough to hunt, obviously, the larger creatures, but 5 or 6 foot shark, even at that size, they're not going to be able to take down a seal. This is mostly to do with the fact that they can't really generate the power needed, so they're not going to be able to swim fast enough or get enough, oomph behind their hit when they find a seal. But there's actually a mechanical reason for it too. When a shark reaches about 10 foot-ish or so, a little less, a little more, by then there's a buildup of cartilage around the jaw, and once you get to that size and you've got enough cartilage buildup, it acts as basically a shock absorber. So imagine a 4,000-pound shark swimming as fast as it can from below. You got a seal above. The shark comes up, bam, hits this seal with nothing but its mouth. So all that force is taken into that jaw. Now, yeah, the shark's heavy, but say the seal's 2 pounds, he's just gonna fly out of the water. But that seal's not 2 pounds. That seal's not 50 pounds. That seal's not 100 pounds. That seal's like 300 or so pounds. So that's like a semi-truck pretty much hitting a dumpster or a brick wall or something like that. That's a lot of force. So that force has to go somewhere. Now, the momentum carries them on and out of the water, so the force isn't completely taken to the jaw, but that jaw still needs to have some compression to slow down and absorb that impact. And smaller sharks just don't have that ability to absorb the blow. Because of a small shark, we're able to generate enough speed and force to do that. They basically come up, hit the seal from below, and it's going to hurt the seal. And that's neither here nor there. It's going to hurt the seal, but it's going to shatter that little shark's jaw, and it won't be able to eat, and it'll eventually starve to death. And I mean, to get a good perspective on how much force is involved in this type of hunting method, it's called breaching when they fly out of the water. Look up on Google or YouTube great whites breaching. And so you've got these 5,000-pound sharks just flying out of the water, and it's just to imagine that much force to be able to lift them out of the water like that, just putting all that pressure in their jaw. It's really cool to watch, I'll say that much, but it's one of those things that you want to watch when you're safe at home. Because the thought of being out on a boat in warm coastal waters where you could run into a great white and all of a sudden, bam, hit by a great white, your boat, maybe you're swimming, whatever, no. Just leave me out of it. Along with this, so you got the small sharks that hunt smaller fish, a little bit quicker but not big and bulky. You got the medium to large sharks that are hunting bigger, bulkier, need the speed to get to animals. But once you get bigger than that, like the massive 20-foot, 5,000-pound females that are just record holders, now they're a little too big at that point to get up the speed to generate the speed needed to catch these fast animals. So they completely revised the way that they hunt, and what they do is they actually go more after slower prey like whales and oceanic sunfish, which is the heaviest species of bony fish. They can't move as fast, so they're easier targets, and you've still got the size and power of the big shark muscles to rip chunks off. So they also search out whale carcasses, and what they'll do is they'll find a dead whale that's floating, sit and eat on it for as long as possible, eating the blubber, high nutrient, high calorie portions of the carcass, and then eventually the body of the whale will sink to the bottom of the ocean and fuel the food web at the bottom. And then the shark will have to move on to find something else. Alright, well, I'd have to say that we covered great whites pretty well for this kind of a format. There's still, of course, so much more information that we could go into, but to keep time short, I think I'm already running up pretty high. To keep time short, I'll say that if you want to know more, or I said something that piqued your interest and I didn't go far enough into it, just ask. Just say, hey, I want to know more about this, or hey, can you explain this? And I'll follow up. I'll make a short video just doing little footnotes or whatever. Or simplify it and get yourself some research experience and jump on Google. Jump on Google, search anything you want, and you're going to probably find some pretty good information about it. Like I said at the beginning, check your references. Whatever page you go on to, make sure they have references. Now, with all that being said, I'd like to add here that great white sharks are pretty much the very tip top of the food web found in the ocean. They have very, very, very few creatures that would even attempt to target them as prey. And of that, of those creatures that would target a great white shark, it would basically just be larger sharks. So you've got a 10-foot shark just swimming along minding his business, think it's going to kick every fish's butt down there on the reef because it runs the roost, and next thing you know, you got Big Mama 20-footer coming over her shoulder, and she's like, that looks like a tasty snack. Another threat, natural threat, is orcas. Orcas are also similar to sharks. Very, very avid hunters, and they're fast, and the thing is they're smart. So they will from time to time take on even a great white. Despite those two pretty much being the only groups that would target a great whites are at a conservation status as vulnerable. This vulnerable listing comes from a group called the International Union for Conservation of Nature, and they put together their groupings of animal conservation status in something called the Red List of Threatened Species. Excuse me. You can also hear it referred to as just the IUCN's Red List, shorthand of it. So this group places great whites just one step below endangered, and this is based off of population numbers. The fact that they're vulnerable stems mostly because population is decreasing globally. It's not just a centralized event like, okay, every year we have 3,000 sharks visit this coast, and this year we've only got 1,000, so sharks in danger. No, it's just there's a problem in your specific area. But now if you go around and say, okay, every year we have 3,000 sharks visit every coast of the United States and every other country, and then you only have 10 sharks show up per beach, per coast, that's a global issue. And this decline in population really only has one cause, and it's turning out to be a pretty big threat globally, and that is humans, us. We are pretty much the biggest threat to all animals, but with sharks especially. Humans over the years have been hunting great whites for many, many reasons. Recently you'll find people hunting great whites for their fins, for shark fin soup. You're going to have people hunting for the teeth, for souvenirs. Instead of just waiting for them to fall out of the shark and collect them on a beach, they'll just go kill a shark and get, hundreds of teeth all at once. Another is trophies. Trophy hunters, sports fishermen. That's what I'm looking for. Sports fishermen go out and they think that, oh, I'm the best fisher in the world, and they nab up a great white and that proves it. To each their own, but if you're going to hunt to eat, not hunt to stuff and show and mount on a wall and be proud that you killed something beautiful. Moving on. Adding to that threat of being hunted. You've also got fear. Fear is a big part in that. Now, people will target sharks. Doesn't matter what species. If a bunch of swimmers are attacked on a beach, one gets a shark bite, and say it's a nurse shark. Okay, people won't take that into consideration, and they'll go out boating with shotguns and rifles and spears and hunt any shark in the area and just be like, oh, that's the shark that did it, even though obviously it was a nurse shark, so it probably got stepped on when somebody went running out in the water. It's sad. People don't think things through. But there's also commercial fishing that's a problem. You have a fleet of boats that go out and dump those giant nets into the water. They end up catching more than just tuna. You get sharks and dolphins and all sorts of different kinds of fish and crustaceans. And all that's called bycatch. Now, most of the time, they don't want bycatch. It's a waste of their nets. It can ruin their nets. So there are a lot of steps that are being taken to stop bycatch from happening, but it's going to happen no matter what. And sometimes they'll take the animal, they'll bring it up, release it. And yeah, it could survive after that happened. And also, what happens a lot of the time is they catch the animal, they throw it back in the water, but because it's stressed so much and it struggled so hard while caught in this net, it's free, but it still dies anyway. And then there's also other commercial fishing companies that just, oh, we got a dolphin, oh, we got 3 sharks, we got a sea otter and 14 crabs, oh, we were trying to catch salmon, but let's just throw it all in the blender anyway and make some fish sticks. So be careful of what you buy. Along with the fear that people have as a danger to them, and there, I mean, there are steps taken that are to prevent shark attacks, but they tend to be bad as well. You got these mesh nets that just surround a swimming area, and it's to keep the sharks out. But what happens is the shark hears people splashing and thinks, oh, animal in distress, I better go check this out. They're opportunistic. They think a fish is dying, they're going to go. That's just what they're programmed to do. They can't tell the splash of a dying fish from a human splash, so they come in to investigate. Oh no, there's a net, I'm tangled up, and now I'm dead. And then you've got, on top of that, I mean, if that's not enough, and this is the last one I'm going to mention, you've got the unknown complications that are coming from climate change issues. Now, whether you believe it or not, I may have a degree, but I'm not a scientist. I'm not here to convince you one way or another. I'm just here to try to educate. There are scientific, there's plenty of scientific evidence, but I'm not here to push an agenda. Moving on to some more, something better, honestly. Good news is, even though humans are causing these problems, there's plenty that's being done. Well, not plenty. There can always be more, but there is a lot being done. There's conservation agencies. Now, like, go your local zoo. If they're AZA accredited, they probably work with conservation programs for other species. There's not-for-profit groups. There's probably a not-for-profit group for almost every species on Earth. Generally, the cute animals get the most, but there are not-for-profits for sharks. But there are some that are just blanket agencies. For instance, World Wildlife Fund. The guys with the, well, let's go this way. There we go. The guys with the little panda. Left and right. The guys with Little Panda, they do a lot of good work. In the World Wildlife Fund, what they're doing is they're tagging and monitoring shark populations, so they can keep track of where they're at, what they're doing, and their interactions with humans. And what they do is they take all this information that they get from these tags, and then they crunch the numbers, and they try to come up with the most concise plan that they can, called a species management plan. And what it's designed to do is it's supposed to balance the needs of the species, so what the great whites or any other species needs to grow their population back to healthy levels, while also still balancing the effect that human activities have. Not completely stopping people from doing what people do, but trying to educate people to willingly change their bad behaviors. Alright, hey, we made it. We're at the end of the video. That's all the information I've got on great white sharks. Once again, I'd like to thank all of you for being supportive throughout the development and implementation of this channel. Chucky, hope you enjoyed this video, and I really hope that you learned something. It's what I'm here to do. And that, honestly, that goes for everybody else, anyone that watched this video. I personally think that I don't think that anybody, no one, should go through more than one day without learning at least one thing new. Especially if it concerns a topic that you already enjoy. So, any suggestions for the next topic in my video are welcome, and I'd like to see at least one comment or suggestion per view. Hint, hint, family members that watch this. This channel was originally designed so that I could teach Chuck new things, but I'm not going to limit myself to just that. I'm sure I can balance his requests with requests from other viewers and family members and such. So I don't care who you are. If you want to learn something, if you think that I have information that you want to know, ask a question. It doesn't have to be specifically about animals. It can be about pretty much anything, and I'll at least do my best. That's all I can do, is try my best, and hope you either are entertained by my being completely wrong and dumb, or you learn something because I'm actually right about it. That, like I said, family members, Dara, I'm going to suggest this channel to you, so if Junior or Maria in time begins to watch these videos, if they want to learn something, let me know. I'll dedicate a video specifically for one of them. Just comment. If you got my number, call me, text me, whatever. I mean, I'd like to think that I'm teaching at least all of my viewers one new thing. At this point, I'll add the obligatory, if you like this video, please like and subscribe. But enough growling for views. My plan for this channel is I'm going to try to post one gaming video and one informative video a week. So far I'm looking at gaming somewhere around Wednesday, possibly Thursday, and then the informative video like this one on Friday, depending on shooting schedule and editing time. Like right now, it's 1:30 in the afternoon on a Friday. Depending on how long it takes to edit this with all the extra stuff that's happened, I might have this up tonight, late tonight, or tomorrow during, before noonish. But with all that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.